Hello, parents, and welcome back to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. For today's episode, we have the third part to this three-part series, or how I like to call it, the series. And it's called the series because these are the three things that feels very strongly about, and that these are vital for our children's development. And for me as a mom, these are three things that I can easily overlook because I'm tired, maybe I don't have time, or I just really don't know why it's so important to our kids' development. And so the third part to this series is why art. And Amma is going to give us why art is so vital to our children's development, just like she did for the music and the reading. And so hopefully after learning what you learned today, it's going to be easier to implement art time into our routines with our littles, because it really does provide some amazing benefits for our kids. We want our kids to be the most successful, have high self-esteem, and just be overall achievers. And sometimes we get that confused with just getting high test grades, but it really starts with these three foundational topics. So thank you for joining us, and stay tuned to hear all about why art is so beneficial for our littles. You ready? Let's get into it.
Hey, Mama, welcome to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. Do you want to end the constant battles for bath time? Do you find yourself emotionally exhausted at the end of the day? Do you wake up with big hopes for a smooth day of fun with your little ones, only to face an early morning meltdown because you peeled their banana the wrong way?
Silly you.
Silly you.
Hey, I'm Serena. I'm a mama of two little ones, and as a new mama, I constantly questioned myself. I wanted to make sure I was raising respectful kids while also building a strong bond with them. But I discovered that I had to unlearn my ideas that punishment was the way. With Lisa's encouragement, I've been practicing a respectful and gentle parenting approach, which is strengthening our bond as a family.
And hi, I'm Lisa. Amma means grandmother in Icelandic. I am a mama and an amma. And I have over 40 years of experience in childcare and parent coaching. And I am so excited to share the knowledge I've gained over these years with you.
Together in this podcast, each week we will explore some easy to implement skills you can add to your parenting tool belt to help you create a happy, thriving family.
All right, the third part of this three-piece Amma mini series. I love that Mama Serena called it the Amma series. And I realized that what I'm offering you in this series of why music, why read to our children, why art, this little mini series, that is the foundational work that we learn when we become preschool teachers, early childhood educators. And so I'm giving you some insider info here about the importance. And if your child is in nursery school, preschool, some kind of care, kindergarten, hopefully they're getting music and art and being read to and have words up on the walls and different things, because we have been trained to know how vitally important that is. Now, I won't get into the sadness that I feel about how a lot of centers are actually leaning away from that and towards learning, the reading and writing and all the silliness at that age. It's just not appropriate. So I'm here to share with you why these open-ended ways of children being in the world are so important. So today we're focusing on art.
And I just want to say I really appreciate this because as a mom, and when we get home and we're tired and have a million things to do, sometimes we just might turn the TV on, let them kind of go between TV and playing, and they usually get more distracted by the TV and sit in front of it. But this has really allowed me to just leave the TV off, not have that background noise, take out kinetic sand and leave it out for her, really prioritize taking the time to read to her, putting on some music and singing and dancing with her. And so I appreciate this because it's given me the information I need to actually implement it into our routines.
Wow. Okay. Emma feels like crying right now because I know that when Mama Serena gets something and has a breakthrough like that, that you are not alone. We have hundreds or thousands of listeners out there every week, and you're not alone. I know that some of you are getting that, and I feel so grateful to know that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Hey, we're making a difference. All right, so let's get into the question of why art. We're going to talk about the stages of art development in children, and you'll learn why that's an important topic. We're going to talk about what children are gaining from being exposed to opportunities for process oriented art. We'll quickly look at what is process oriented art as opposed to product oriented art. And at the end, I want to talk about how to praise when your toddler comes up and shows you the scribbles all over the page that they just did and they're so excited about it. How do we praise? So that's the little outline of where we're going to go today. Okay. So, first of all, I have a quote for you from a man named Victor Lowenfeld. You'll hear a bit more about him in a minute. The quote says, "For children, art is a way of learning and not something to be learned." Okay. We don't have to teach a child to draw or paint or make art. Yes, we have to provide, or I'm encouraging you to provide lots of opportunities to make art, but it's not something we teach. Okay. It's best to supply loads of paper and crayons, felt pens, larger sizes of those for smaller hands. We'll get into a bit of that later. And paints and brushes. An easel, if you've got room for it in your home, is fantastic, especially if your child isn't in a classroom setting like a daycare where they hopefully have an easel. But easels are fantastic. And I'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. But what I want to say is, why? Why do I want you to have art activities available for your child, like daily, if possible, every day, at least a few times a week? Because art developmental stages mirror overall child developmental stages. So the stages I'm going to walk you through right now are mirroring what a child is learning intellectually, physically, emotionally, socially. And that's all mirrored in the type of art that they create. I want you to know that tracing, people are all into this tracing letters and tracing. I mean, you can have the occasional dot to dot book for a tiny little guy. That's okay, occasional. But coloring books, they're not natural and they don't follow age appropriate development. And you'll understand, I hope, a little bit better about that as I go on. So let me know, Serena, if that lands for you as I talk more about the developmental stages. Why coloring books are not so much in Emma's world. Also, before we go into the stages, I want to tell you that subjecting children, and especially young children, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, to electronic devices, iPads, phones, all the things, can be detrimental to the motor development. So their muscles in their hands, the development of those muscles that are imperative for them to learn to write later, to draw letters, to draw numbers. Those muscles are learned through play and through interacting with these art materials that I'm talking about in today's episode, but they don't use the movements that they need in their hands, fingers, arms, shoulders, all the way up from the fingertips, all the way up to the shoulders is what we use, muscles we use for writing. Okay, so it's detrimental. If you want your child to succeed in school, if you want them to be successful later in life, that's another reason to limit electronic device time. Okay. So in 1947, Victor Lowenfeld, who was an art educator and a psychologist, developed what is known and still widely taught today and used today as Lowenfeld's stages of artistic development. And I just want you to know that children will not go through all of these stages at the same ages, but they will go through all of these stages. And the stages directly correlate to their developmental levels and stages. When to start with art? Well, you can offer a very young child drawing utensils as early as 15 months to 18 months old, and younger if they show interest. You know, I think my daughter had crayons in, like big, fat, those big shape crayons in her hands at probably a year old, 14 months. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, very, very young. And I also want to say that if a child is drawing in inappropriate places, like the walls or the furniture, it's an indication that their development is calling out for more opportunities to draw. We intrinsically know that we need to do these things with our bodies to develop our bodies the way that they need to develop. It's just a natural understanding that we have, not a literal understanding. They couldn't tell you that, of course, but intrinsically, this is what the human child knows. So if they're drawing in funny places that you don't want them to draw in, give them more opportunities.
And don't say no. We have an episode on that.
We do. You could pop that one in the show notes.
Yeah.
All right. So stage 1 of art development. Can you guess what it might be called, Serena? Like what do babies and children do first when they first start drawing at very young ages?
Scribble.
Yep. It's the scribble stage. Stage, and it's from 1 to 4 years old, approximately. And there are 4 sub-stages in this stage. So the first one is random or disordered scribbles. The second one is longitudinal, it's called, somewhat more controlled, more repetition. The third sub-stage is circular, so more complex forms are emerging. And the fourth stage is naming. So it goes from a kinesthetic, so what we feel in our bodies, moving our bodies, to an awareness of thinking in pictures. And it's at that fourth level that it shifts to the next main stage. And just bear with me because some of this may seem like, why do we need to know this? I just want to share this with you. And I want you to, you will start seeing your children's scribbles in a whole new light after today.
Yeah.
I promise. And if you don't, call me, like write to me.
I have scribbles hanging up here in my little office, and you have me looking at them, analyzing them right now.
Great. Okay, good. I want to see them. All right. So in the very beginning, so I'm not going to just mention those sub stages. So in the very beginning, we've got the random disordered scribble stage. That's the sub stage. Development of muscle coordination is what's happening here. So they grab the crayon, they make movements with their arm It's not with their fingers or their wrists necessarily. The whole arm, sometimes half the body moves in the very young child, and they're developing their muscle coordination. They are exploring cause and effect. These scribbles are often uncontrolled, disordered, kind of accidental markings. They're completely random. It's all about cause and effect and simply enjoying making their bodies move and creating lines and dots. So the cause, I grab this thing, I move my body, and there's markings on a page. That's the effect of my cause of movement, right? Also, the colors are completely random at this stage. It's a manipulation of materials, which is the process, not the product. So, just quickly, process art, it's open ended, there's no end result in mind. If you think back to elementary school, the teacher's going to show you how to draw the trunk of a tree and some branches of a tree and stick little bits of tissue paper on the branches in springtime. That was a classic thing that we did in school. I don't know if you remember that, but that kind of, the teacher has an idea of what it wants to look like, what she wants you to make. She tells you how to make it, and then you follow her instructions. That's product-oriented art. The process art is there's no result in mind. You're not copying an adult example. It's child-led. If a child says, I don't know how to draw a person, go, oh, what would you like to draw that could be a person? Please don't draw stick people for them. Let the child lead. It's about the journey, not the destination. Okay. They are enjoying the movements and creating as a result of them. Like when you give a very young toddler a crayon or a big fat felt pen and a piece of paper, like watch their eyes for the first time when they actually can create marks on paper. It's pretty exciting. They're using their large or gross motor, their big muscles, as well as their fine or small motor, small muscles. So their arms, their shoulders, their elbows, their wrists, and then down to their fingers and their, finger joints and holding the pencils and crayons. We need to strengthen our arms and shoulders to develop smaller motor control, to use our hands and fingers well, and to avoid fatigue. So that's why easels are so good, because they use their whole arm to paint those strokes up and down the big piece of easel. That's why getting kitchen paper and using big pieces of paper on your kitchen table. And if you're worried about marks going on the table, put a layer of newspaper underneath or something, right? Like protect your furniture, but give them space to make big movements with their drawings. Strong muscles in our hands lead not only to being able to write words and numbers on paper, but also before that to dressing themselves. They start to learn to dress themselves. We need our hands, our muscles in our fingers and our wrists and our shoulders to be able to get our clothes on in the morning. So there's another bonus. If you want your toddler to start dressing themselves, give them art activities.
Wow.
Yeah, right? Youngest children, so the very young toddlers, those year-old, year and a half, 2, even 3-year-olds, they will hold crayons with their whole hand. It's called the palmar grasp. They will use all those big muscles we've been talking about. They use the whole arm to manipulate that crayon or that paintbrush, that felt pen. They're building those big muscles. We do not need to teach a young toddler how to hold a crayon or a pencil or a pen or anything. In fact, it's detrimental for us to try and teach them that. They're not developmentally ready yet. Okay. So don't freak out if they're grabbing it with their whole palm. It's called the palmar grasp. It's been studied for decades. It's a stage that they're in. Developmentally typical child will start using what we call the tripod grasp. So that's the thumb and the first and second finger. That's, you can see how it's a tripod, those three. They'll start using that grasp between the ages of 4 and 7. So you don't have to rush it. Okay. You don't have to rush them along. Please do not force them to use that tripod grasp. You want them to hold a pencil like it's supposed to be held. No, they're not ready yet. 4-year-olds, and this is why, partly why Amma is not happy with preschools who are getting children to learn how to write letters. They're not developmentally ready for formal writing yet. This is all called pre-writing skills at these toddler ages and preschool ages. There are developmentally appropriate ways that we can enhance that motor development of the small muscles in the hand. For example, drawing and painting with different materials, large paintbrushes at an easel, large paintbrushes on a table. They're going to use different muscles when they're doing things. And then in the good weather, go outside, get big, huge paintbrushes. In fact, one really fun activity is you get like a house paintbrush. You're going to paint your walls. You get a couple of those, or however many you want to get for those, at your local shop. And you give them a bucket of water. And on a sunny day, they go paint with water. And they get to paint on the sidewalk. They get to paint on the wall of the house. They get to paint anywhere they want because it's just water, and they'll watch it evaporating, and it's good for those large muscles. So that's a really fun thing when summer comes along. They can also be given smaller paintbrushes. They'll use different muscles when they're given larger items or smaller items. They're crayons, of course, chalk, big pieces of paper, like I mentioned, smaller pieces of paper, different colors of paper. All the different things will inspire them to explore with the materials. Painting with small sponges cut into small pieces, is a really fun way to encourage that appropriate muscle development, which leads to the tripod grasp, the pencil grasp. Okay. So that's just a fun one. If your child is 4, 5, 6, and they're still not holding those writing utensils or drawing utensils in that pencil grasp, then they might need to develop those muscles more. So cut some sponges up into small pieces and let them paint with those. Also, as I love to talk about, doing these kinds of things, doing puzzles, building with blocks, doing water play, and Serena's girls' favorite, Play-Doh. These all build the muscles that we want to build for writing. Threading large wooden beads with a shoelace, cutting paper scraps with child-friendly scissors, dressing dollies. Early learning centers and daycares focus on all of these for good reason. It's not just giving your kids fun stuff to do. It is. And there's huge benefits to the fun.
With purpose.
Exactly. All right. Somewhere between the ages of 2 and 4, so we're still in that first stage of scribble stage, the controlled scribbling starts to emerge. So the scribbles might appear somewhat more organized. Now I want Serena to look up at those scribbles on the wall above your desk and see what you can see. You might notice some more horizontal and vertical lines. At this stage, shapes that look like the letter T and the letter V begin to emerge. They're not trying to make a letter T. you can get excited about it, and it's not, they're not even if their name is Tom, right? But these shapes emerge. This has been studied. It's incredible. You'll also start to see loops and squiggly lines and spiral kinds of shapes and almost circles. But you'll see in a minute when we get to circles, there's beginning to be an understanding between the cause and effect for these children. Originally, it was just, they were just doing it for fun. Now they're beginning to understand. You're beginning to see repeat movements like on purpose. The eye-hand coordination is improving. Their fine motor control is more developed. They may start to show dominant hand use. So if they're going to be right-handed or left-handed, when they're now in this later stage of the scribbling stage, they may start to show dominant hand. I want to say many, many, many toddlers will draw with either or both hands. I love getting photographs of kids painting at an easel using both hands at the same time. So they're still not quite dominant hand yet. And they will begin at this later stage of the scribbling stage to use that tripod pencil grasp, and circles and squares and crosses and dots will start to emerge. So we're going to move into very quickly. I won't have quite as much here. This is stage 2. It's called the pre-schematic stage. Pre-schematic, from ages 4 to 7 approximately. So this transitional benchmark from scribble stage to pre-schematic stage are 2 things. They're closing their shapes, like they're almost drawing a circle up until now. Now they're drawing a circle, and it's not a perfect circle, but it's a closed shape. That is significant. Serena, look at those and see if there's any closed shapes up there. No?
Not in this one, but we do have one that
yeah, great. And the basic shapes begin to emerge, the circles, the ovals, the squares. They won't know what those shapes are, but they are starting to show up. And the other major benchmark here, moving from that first stage to the second stage, is that they're naming their scribbles. So instead of asking, okay, Serena, tell me what you said earlier about when you're looking at your daughter's scribble, and you might say, is it
yeah, wow, is that a penguin? And she'll be
and how
like,
does that go?
no.
Like, why would you think that?
Yeah, like insulted and
Yeah. So it's best not to ask what you think it is, but rather to question, wow, I love this shape right here. Can you tell me about your picture? I would love to know more about what's going on in this picture for you. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and learning how to respond like that, it's definitely like learning a new language. So
Yeah.
it does, because when that question did come out, I'm like, oh, no. and so
Yeah.
yeah, that does take practice.
Yeah. And it's good. It's a great thing to practice. Okay. And then the next, so just all of those things are going to be developing through this second stage. Now, before we get into the schematic stage, which is actually like drawing pictures of things, that's what schematic means. The benchmark to transition from stage 2 to stage 3 is what we call the head foot figure, or the tadpole person. So this is super exciting. So when a child draws their first circles, that is a landmark. And it's not a perfect circle, like I said, but that's a landmark. And that's really exciting developmentally, because we know what's going on in their brains when they're able to draw that closed shape is a huge developmental step. Okay. Now they will add They will draw that shape, that closed shape, and they will draw two legs, two lines coming out the bottom that are legs. It's called a tadpole person. When I was in school, we called it a head foot figure. This is massive. Sometimes they'll add eyes, those first drawings. And then they'll add more and more details to those tadpole people. They might add arms as well. They might add fingers. They might add some more facial features like a mouth, or hair or something. And eventually they'll fill in and put a body between the head and the legs and the arms. But the heads are always the largest. And what's really cool here is what is most important in that child's experience is what will show up. And that's why we see the eyes come first, because they're looking at us, they're looking at the world, right? The eyes are so important. Okay. And then from 7 to 9 years old, they're into the schematic stage. So we don't have to go there because most of you are having younger children, I think, who are listening here. And I just want to say that going into the schematic phase, for those of you who do have some older kids, you'll see the benchmark is more organized space, which means there's going to be a ground put in at the bottom of the picture and sometimes a sky put in at the top. And there will be, a tree that grows up from the ground, and there will be flowers that grow up from that kind of thing. It's more organized. Okay.
I remember being stuck in that phase and not knowing how to get out of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
The sun in the corner.
Yeah. And that is the stage of art development. That is the schematic stage. So you were probably right on time and you didn't need to hurry up and get out of it. Okay, so quickly now, that's the fundamentals. I just want to go through what they're learning aside from things I've already said in there. So we talked about the large motor development, the small motor development, covered that. The brain, creativity, which is what open-ended art is. Creativity enhances neuropathway development. Those brain, pistons are going to be firing the more creative opportunities, creative play, creative art, whatever it is, those neuropathway development. Art also encourages creative thinking, and creative thinkers are the best learners through life, right? Science. They are experimenting with color and shape and textures of different papers, maybe that kind of thing, colors of papers, all those kinds of things. And blending paint colors. That's science. That's the groundwork for science. There's a lot of maths in art. They're sequencing if they're doing lines and dots and things. They're learning numbers of things. They're learning shapes, all these different things. The language development that develops while they're making art just for the sake of making art is huge. Here's a really important one. Creative art enhances focus and expands attention spans. And you know how much all of the time on devices is lowering those attention spans to where children are going into preschool, let alone kindergarten and grade 1, and they don't have an attention span to listen to their teacher.
We don't have an attention span to listen to our kids.
We don't. So that's let's all do some art. Let's all just do some art. Okay. What else have I got here for you? It encourages the brain to relax. It absorbs other stressors. Children who get exposure to doing this kind of art embrace experimentation. They grow up being children and adults who are willing to make mistakes. quote unquote mistakes and try new things. That's an incredible gift to give your children. It will help them throughout their entire life. Doing art activities builds confidence and it enhances self-confidence and self-esteem. So those 10 reasons for doing art. I mean, I'm sold, but I was already sold.
Yeah.
Let me just see. Children create art by exploration of and interaction with the materials, by playing, which is developmentally appropriate for toddlers and preschoolers. They explore, they experiment. There's no wrong way. So that lessens anxiety, right? And just quickly to finish off, I wanted to just talk about again, we touched on it a minute ago. How do you praise this art when your child comes up to you and shows you this picture of scribbles? Like, what do you say? We touched on, please don't say, is that a penguin? Or is that a whatever you might think it is? But you can ask questions. But in even better than asking questions is because sometimes a child isn't drawing something for it to be something. That's the other thing, especially in those younger stages. And sometimes when we say, what is it? They're like, oh, is it supposed to be something? Right? Like, oh, that then their anxiety goes up. So the very best way is to observe what you see and talk about that or talk about how you feel. Wow, I see dots over here and squiggles over there, and I see a circle right here. That's pretty cool. You just describe what you see. I see red. I see purple. I see blue. I see yellow. You use a lot of colors on this one. Just simply describe. Do you have a story about that, Serena? Where
Oh,
there was?
yeah. So because we have spoken about this before, and when I have done that, I notice my daughter, she gets like bashful and she smirks, and you can see that she's so proud of just what she's
Right.
created. And
Yes.
you're right, it doesn't have to be anything. It's just my art. And probably most of the art, abstract art, is so popular right now, and it's just hanging in everyone's hallways. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just beautiful colors and so
Some people get paid millions for abstract
yes.
art, scribbles,
Yeah.
basic scribbles, with color and experimentation. Yes. Yes. And you can also talk about how how a piece makes you feel. You can say, wow, the colors that you used, they make me feel happy. I don't know why exactly, but I just feel happy looking at this picture. So just find ways of describing what you see, what you feel, that kind of thing. And if you really want to know what the picture is, that open-ended question instead of what is it, the open-ended question could be, I see lots of colors or I see lots of shapes. Tell me about your painting, or tell me about your picture. I'm curious, that kind of thing. Okay, there we go. I hope that inspires you. Get a roll of kitchen paper, get some big places for them to draw. I'll try to post more on our socials about different kinds of art. I've been really lacking on our socials lately. I apologize for those of you who follow us, but I do have some. You can scroll back through time. There are lots of art on there already, and I'll try to get a bit more of that coming in the next little bit here. Okay, anything else, Mama Serena?
I'm just grateful for this episode and excited to go do some art with my daughters.
Yay, awesome. I'm excited to hear your gems. I always love hearing your gems. All right, everybody, we love you. Get some good basic art materials in your home if you don't have them already, and let your little ones go for it.
Okay, so let's jump into my gems from this episode. Number 1, I love the quote that Emma shared from Victor Lowenfeld. For children, art is a way of learning and not something to be learned. And that just reminds me of how we just always put our kids in a box, whether it's filling in the lines, tracing in the lines, or how to hold the pen. And I just want to remind you that we can let go of that pressure, let our kids hold the pens how they please, because it's a stage and they will learn. Don't force them to trace or color within the lines. Give opportunities of open-ended art. And then number 2 is all the amazing benefits that art provides for our kids, like creativity, enhancing focus, expanding attention spans, which is extremely necessary in this time. It encourages their brain to relax, embrace experimentation. I love that. As like an entrepreneur, I would love for my child to just have that ability to embrace making mistakes and trying again. It builds their confidence and it enhances self-esteem. Another thing with this day and age is self-esteem and always comparing themselves to other people online. So I love that. I love all of those things. And then lastly is how to praise our kids' art. And that is simply describe what you see or explain how you feel. And if you do think it is something, without asking them if it's a penguin, you can just ask, or you can tell them, tell me about your painting. And then let them express what their drawing or painting means to them. I love this episode. I was very artistic and I would love for my daughters to embrace that. And so I just hope that we are less scared of the mess, because that is a point of frustration, but I'd rather them be painting or drawing than staring at a TV. So I'll take out all their arts and crafts. I have a few bins, one with markers, one with pencils, one with crayons and paper. We have an easel that I asked for I think my daughter's second Christmas. And I know to help them clean up, because I don't want them drawing on the walls or drawing anywhere. And you can set those boundaries. Don't allow them to draw wherever they please. Give them the opportunities. And don't be scared of the mess, because all the benefits really outweigh the mess that it takes 5 minutes to clean up. I hope you enjoyed this. We hope that you learned a lot, and we hope that you are able to implement this into your daily or weekly routines with your littles. We love you, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
I want to sing with you. I want to dance with you. I want to laugh with you. Oh, how I love to be with you. I do. I do. Such a short time we've been together. Seems like a lifetime or two. Never knew I could love another